Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
I parked a few rows down, about a dozen spaces from my wife's car, with an open view of the entrance to the Happy Life yoga studio. I watched as she walked inside, wearing tight pink leggings from Lululemon and a matching crop top, which looked more like sportswear than regular clothing. She was walking happily, without any bags in her hands, although she had just placed her clothes and a bottle of water in the trunk, which, apparently, she didn't need. I waited. We didn't have to wait long. About 5 minutes later, she came out, but not alone. She was with Marcel, a self-proclaimed yogi and the head of the Happy Life studio. They walked arm in arm, and I couldn't help but feel a strong dislike for him, a feeling that started the moment I met him, though perhaps it started even earlier when I had to constantly hear Jude's enthusiastic stories about how amazing he was. Jude held his hand with both palms and leaned her head on his shoulder. Even from this distance, I could see their smiles as they approached her car. Marcel sat in the passenger seat, and Jude got behind the wheel. I watched as she started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward the highway. I let them drive a little ahead so they wouldn't notice I was following, and then I moved after them. I didn't have to keep them in sight, as the GPS tracker gave me constant and accurate updates on their location. I was disappointed but not surprised when Jude pulled into the Marriott parking lot. Well, at least if she decided to betray me, it wasn't in a cheap motel. They parked and got out of the car, hugging briefly. Marcel tried to kiss my wife, but she turned away, his lips brushing her cheek. Jude looked worried, and I'm sure she blushed. Marcel held her hand and led her to the hotel entrance, but Jude hesitated, almost as though she was reluctant to follow him. They stood nearby, animatedly discussing something. When Jude was nervous, she always made active gestures with her hands. I hadn't seen her like this since the team meeting in April. She gestured to the right, and Marcel nodded. The two of them entered the hotel's restaurant, not the hotel itself. I waited a few minutes for them to settle in, and then I entered the hotel lobby. I looked around, taking a closer look at all the entrances and exits, observing where the staff was working, and memorizing the location of the CCTV cameras. I walked down the hallway on the right side of the lobby, past the convenience store and the business center. When I reached the end of the corridor and the entrance to the restaurant, I hesitated briefly. The door was open, and next to it was a small, unattended hostess stand. Considering it was about 3 p.m., the place seemed pretty empty, so I didn't expect anyone to be manning the counter. A small sign was taped to the front of the counter that said, "Seat yourself." I carefully looked around the doorway for signs, but nothing unusual caught my eye. By law, if an establishment received at least 51% of its income from the sale of alcohol, they were required to hang a corresponding sign at all entrances. There was no such sign here. My hand habitually touched a hard metal object hidden under my sports jacket as I scanned the room. An elderly man was sipping coffee and reading the sports section of the newspaper. A young couple with a baby was dining on hamburgers at the next table. As I mentioned, the place was practically empty. When I reached the middle of the room, a waitress came out from behind the swinging doors leading to the kitchen. She wiped her hands on her apron and approached me. "Hello? Alone?" she asked with a polite, but somewhat forced, smile. "Actually," I replied, "I'm meeting some friends for a couple of drinks." I nodded toward the small lounge area near the bar. The waitress nodded and went to check if any customers needed assistance. I slowly walked up to the bar and saw them huddled together in a booth, their backs to me. As I got closer, I began to hear snippets of their conversation. "You do?" Marcel said in a mock French accent. "You know your husband has nothing like that." Jude sat closer to the wall, pressed against Marcel. He put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned on him. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said softly. I approached the table, took a seat next to Marcel, and gently pushed him aside to make room for myself, nudging them both into the corner of the booth. "Hey, what the hell?" Marcel exclaimed, quickly turning around to see who had intruded on their conversation. I couldn't help but find it amusing that he lost his accent in his surprise when he saw me. The blood drained from his face, and his eyes widened. Jude pulled her hand away from him and covered her mouth, letting out a small cry. "Bill," she exclaimed, "what are you doing here?" She seemed to realize the awkwardness of the situation and added, "It's not what you think." I laughed. "I was wondering if you'd say that." "Very funny, Jude. Very funny." Unfortunately, I understood perfectly well what was happening. There were 2 plastic room keys on the table, one in front of Marcel and the other, still in the folder with the Marriott Hotel logo, was in front of my wife. I reached across Marcel and grabbed the key with the number 405. I see, I said aloud. There wasn't enough space in the studio, so you decided to hold the class at the hotel. I need to leave, Marcel said, trying to push me out of the booth. Sit down and shut up, I replied, pushing him back down when he tried to stand up. Don't make a scene. It's not as bad as it seems, I swear, Jude desperately tried to assure me. I didn't cheat on you. I picked up the second key lying in front of Marcel, looking at it in bewilderment. You forgot the word yet, Jude, I said. You haven't cheated on me. Yet. I didn't mean it like that, she began to stammer, trying to justify herself. I lost my head, Bill. I didn't understand what I was doing. I'm sorry. I need to leave, Marcel repeated, now with a distinct Texas accent. Sit down and shut up, I growled, barely containing my frustration. I tried to contain my anger. And you, Jude? What did you do, huh? Right, Marcel, he muttered fearfully, seeming ready to cry. I don't want to get involved in this. This is between you two. Let me go. I don't want problems. I chuckled again. It's too late not to interfere, Marcel. You didn't mind interfering with my wife until I found out about it. How many other married women from your studio have you attracted? I don't know what you're talking about. Marcel tried to feign innocence. He's not like that. Bill, my wife, Jude, said passionately, coming to the defense of her boyfriend. Marcel is just a wonderful teacher. You've got it all wrong. I shook my head, feeling a bit sorry for Jude. Oh, Jude, did you really think he treats you special? Did you honestly believe you were the only one he was trying to seduce? Jude's face darkened, and she looked at me. Of course not, she said, almost making excuses. I don't think I'm special to him. He's just my yoga instructor. Just your yoga instructor? I asked, trying not to laugh. What were you doing when I approached? I could see Jude blushing, her posture expressing complete defeat. She knew I had revealed her. He lied to you, Jude, I said. He slept with at least half of the married women in your class. This teacher preys exclusively on those who are married. He's been manipulating you. I don't believe you, she whispered, but I could see doubt in her eyes. Is it true? I asked, my voice quiet but firm. I warned you what your infatuation with him would lead to. Didn't I say that one day he would show his true colors and ask you to sleep with him? Yes, but it wasn't like that, she responded sharply. I didn't mean to cheat on you. I chuckled. How were you going to do this without cheating on me? We're still married. At least for now. She faltered. He said that being with him would help improve our relationship, she explained, trying to find an excuse. It was another type of yoga, and he was going to teach me the techniques so I could use them with you. Judging by the expression on her face, even she didn't believe her own words. I shook my head, barely holding back a grin. I also told you he would do everything to convince you that this wasn't cheating, I said. She nodded, close to tears. You said so, she admitted. Listen, man, Marcel began, without a trace of his French accent, his voice trembling with fear. Take your stupid. I'm tired of her whining. I tried to get Jude to do this for months, but every time I thought she was ready, she backed down. Just let me go, please. I'll leave her alone. Marcel's words hit Jude hard. She looked up at me, and tears streamed down her face. Forgive me, Bill, she sobbed. I was a fool. I didn't believe you. I swear, I never meant to hurt you. Yes, but you did, I told her. The worst part is that all this time, I knew this man was messing with you, and I tried to make you understand, but you bought his lies. She lowered her head and cried. If you don't let me go immediately, I'll call the police, Marcel said, interrupting me suddenly, trying to feign confidence. You don't understand, do you, Marcel? I said, grinning with the same audacity he usually showed me. I threw back the tails of my jacket, and his gaze fell on the badge and weapon at my side. I could see the fear in his eyes. I am the police, I said. Jude and I recently celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. At that time, one of our children was already in college, and the other was about to graduate from high school. I had been thinking about retiring, and Jude was bored. She had been a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 years, and with our children nearly grown, she was looking for something to keep her busy. We should have been thinking about a future together, but instead, the focus was all on Jude. It was then that she first became interested in yoga. Her best friend, Melissa, had been going to a studio located in a small shopping center not far from our house, and during every conversation, she couldn't stop talking about how great it was. I'll admit, Melissa did look happy and in better shape than I'd ever seen her. So when Jude told me she wanted to start going to classes with Melissa, I was all for it. at least not against it. Anything that would make her happy, I supported. Well, within reason, of course. I remember how excited she was after the first lesson. She returned home inspired, unable to stop talking about it. I listened patiently, though I had difficulty understanding half of what she said. She enjoyed the physical challenge, but was even more intrigued by the spiritual aspects of yoga and the philosophy of the yogis. To me, it sounded like nonsense, but I'd never been a free thinker. On top of that, she mentioned that the instructor was a handsome Frenchman named Marcel. One Friday morning, during breakfast, she started talking about him again. This was unusual, and an unpleasant feeling began to arise in me. Should I be worried? I asked her from across the kitchen table. About yoga? She asked, not realizing how ridiculous it sounded. I couldn't help but grin. Yoga? Is he smarter than the average bear? I answered, confident that I'd score some points with my wit. Her irritation froze on her face until she understood the joke. Oh yes, Yogi Bear. It's funny. He's a master of yoga, so they call him a yogi. It's a respectful title, you know. Yes, I know what a title is, I replied. Then, trying to imitate a Yogi Bear accent, I added, whatever you say, boo-boo. She rolled her eyes and shook her head, and I decided I'd had enough of the Yogi Bear jokes. It was time to change the subject. You know, I said with a grin, when you're in class, you can notice a lot just by watching. Jude didn't seem to understand the reference but nodded. Well, yoga, she began. Marcel wants everyone to try their best, so no one just stands around watching. You should come sometime. Maybe you'll like it. There was no chance of that happening, and I think she knew that, even before she suggested it. Yoga was never something I expected to want, at least, not in this life. I got my physical training in the gym and my share of pseudo-spiritual philosophy and Aikido classes. Well, make sure you don't give up during class, I said, trying not to laugh and pausing for effect. Because, as they say. Jude looked at me, not understanding. What kind of they are you talking about? They say, it's not over yet, I said, trying to make it sound dramatic. Jude narrowed her eyes. Wait a minute, she said, suspiciously. Are you quoting Yogi Bear? Yogi Berra, I corrected her. He was also a great spiritual thinker. Haha, my wife replied sarcastically. Do you ever take anything I do seriously? This is important to me, she added. Sorry, honey. You're right, I said sincerely. But you didn't answer my question. What question? She asked, getting up from the table to pour us more coffee. I couldn't believe she didn't understand what I was talking about. I'm having déjà vu, I chuckled, then repeated my question in a more serious tone. Should I be worried? If you're going to belittle what's important to me, then yes, you should, she said, placing her hand on her hip, then added, but you don't need to worry about yoga. Marcel's not my type. I chuckled. What kind of taste is this? She replied, raising her eyebrows and emphasizing each point. Well, he's young. He's handsome. He's very athletic, fit, and flexible. From what I can tell, he has amazing stamina. He's smart, and he doesn't criticize my interests. And his package looks huge in tights. Oh, that's just great, I said, laughing. He's as different from me as possible. She sighed and sat down, drinking her coffee again. She had a dreamy, detached look in her eyes. He must be gay, I muttered. You think all handsome men are gay? Jude replied. That's not true. How can you make such an implausible and callous accusation? I only say this about the beautiful ones, well-dressed with perfect teeth, the ones you always admire, I explained. And besides, I'm always right. Name one time when I was wrong. That actor from the movie about the love letter, she said, pretending not to remember. I knew she knew his name. He was on her celebrity list right after Brad Pitt. He's still in the closet, I said confidently. Wait a little while, and you'll hear about it. There will be a scandal, and he'll admit his true feelings. His marriage is just a cover. You're just jealous of all the hot, young, athletic men, she said, sighing. You hate that you're getting old and project it onto others. Am I projecting? I replied, trying to keep my cool. Is this one of those words they teach in Psychology 101? She pursed her lips. I failed psychology. I lied, I said. I actually had a double major in criminology and psychology. I had a master's degree in both fields. Several years ago, I was one of the lead detectives who helped catch a notorious criminal in North Dallas. This brought me national recognition and allowed me to write a book titled The Pathology of Serial Prejudice, which became a semi-bestseller for a while. It was even made into a Lifetime movie. Right now, you're failing to apologize to me, Jude said with a grin. Apologize? Did we quarrel? I asked, playing along. If you want to make peace, I know a great way to do it, she teased. It's too late, she said with an amused grin. You'll be late for work. It's a shame. By the way, after all this discussion about Ryan Gosling, I urgently need a short course on how to handle this. To hell with work, I said, standing up and hugging my beautiful wife. I actually want to retire, but you won't let me. To hell with work, she replied, better than me. We had an intimate moment, and I kissed her hard on the lips before straightening my trousers. Aren't you going to take a shower? Jude asked, surprised. No, I said, it's just disgusting. She gave me a disdainful look but smiled, obviously proud that I wanted to carry her scent with me. I'm old and nasty, I replied, using her words. If you need a young, well-groomed, handsome man, go to your yoga class and look at your yogi. I bet he smells like patchouli. The same distant, dreamy look appeared on her face again. I walked up to her, leaned over, and kissed her deeply. I love you, Jude, but if you ever cheat on me, you know what will happen, right? I would never cheat on you, my big, hairy caveman, she said, kissing me again. Yes, well, keep thinking like that when you look at the packaging of yoga, I said, saying goodbye before heading to work. I had a big task that took a lot of time. A serial offender had returned to North Dallas and Collin County. We knew of 3 victims, and our goal was to stop him before he harmed anyone else or escalated to something more violent. At first, Jude only went to yoga on Wednesday and Friday afternoons when I was at work. A couple of weeks later, she added Monday mornings as well. Soon, Jude was attending yoga every day. When she wasn't in class, she trained at home. Yoga began to dominate her life. She was either doing yoga or talking about it. She was absorbed in everything related to this new way of life. She remodeled our home, changing it from cowboy style to bohemian chic. Our house started to resemble a storefront, as if we were living in an earthbound store. She seemed to have 2 rules for decorating. 1, use as many pillows as possible, and 2, no pillow should be similar to another or match anything else in the house. Her wardrobe also completely changed. She began dressing in a style that was a mix of altered state and 70s Haight-Ashbury, with a heavy dose of Lululemon. The house smelled of different incense, candles, and potpourri all day long. Strange crystals started appearing all over the house, even in our Brita water filter. Why we needed crystals in the water, I didn't understand. I even began to suspect that Jude wasn't averse to smoking with her friends when I wasn't home. Jude didn't limit her enthusiasm for this new lifestyle to simply annoying me. She shared everything with her friends, and several of them joined her yoga classes. She spent her weekdays with her friends and at the yoga studio. But when it started affecting our evenings and weekends, I decided to put an end to it. Jude, why do you have to take time when we're together to do your yoga? You have the whole day free every day. I would like to spend time with my wife when I'm at home and enjoy her company, I said. I'm home more than you are, mister. I'm staying late at work again. What are you even talking about? She answered irritably. Twice this week, you weren't home in the evenings when I returned. You didn't come back until 9, and now you're saying you're going to spend this Saturday in the studio? We're supposed to go to the lake with the Clarks this weekend. The Clarks were our neighbors and friends. Oh, I completely forgot about that, she said, as if lost in thought. I expected her to change her plans, but instead, she shocked me. Can you call them and reschedule the trip for a week or 2? We have an open day at our studio, and I promised Marcel that I would help. Now it's we and Marcel? I asked, surprised. When did this happen? What happened? She asked, looking at me with that look that always appeared when something irritated her. When did you stop calling him Yoga? You always called him that before. When did it become just Marcel? Jude blushed. Crap. This was not a good sign. We work quite closely with each other, and he said I can call him Marcel when no one's around. In class, I call him Yogi, but I'm used to calling him Marcel, she quickly added. It doesn't matter. Whatever you say, boo-boo, I replied, watching her carefully. The detective in me was starting to take over. I studied her closely, trying to spot signs of deceit. Anyway, you work so much overtime, she tried to change the subject. You're at home less than I am. Your business takes up all your free time. You probably shouldn't spend your weekend on any kind of entertainment at all. What she said was true, but only partially. I did work a lot of overtime, sometimes even on weekends. There had been 2 more attacks in the Plano and Fairview areas that seemed to fit the profile of the 3 we already knew. The worst part was that we had no leads or evidence. So, will you call them? She asked. No. I won't, I answered firmly. Then I'll call. I'm sure everything will be fine. One weekend isn't much different from the next, right? No, not like that, I said. This weekend is the annual summer holiday. The band Bowling for Soup is playing, there will be fireworks, a hot air balloon festival, and a lot of other interesting things. We agreed on this a few weeks ago, and the Clarks paid extra to book the very cabin you insisted on. Why do I have to remind you of all this? Are you so engrossed in your yoga that you've completely forgotten about our marriage and our friends? Could you please not call this my yoga? That's very dismissive, she replied, ignoring everything I had just said. Okay, what do you want me to call it? I asked. Just yoga? Yes, yoga is fine, but your yoga is offensive. That's right, I said, shaking my head as if to say, okay. But I knew better than to voice my thoughts aloud. Instead, I decided to make my expectations clear. So you should call Marcel, I said deliberately, not calling him Yogi, and tell him that you can't attend his open house. You don't work there, and you're not the owner. You're just a student. These are our best friends, and we were looking forward to this trip. You yourself were waiting for it until you changed. There will be many more open days. We're going to the lake. I didn't want to sound harsh, but this was crossing all boundaries. Jude sensed my mood and determination, and eventually relented. She called Marcel later and told him she wouldn't be able to attend the event. Jude clearly held a grudge against me all weekend. She was irritable and distant. I understood that her behavior was unjustified and unacceptable. I was determined to figure out why she was so fixated on this hobby. On Monday, I decided I would start using my detective skills for more than just work. Her cold attitude was noticeable to everyone. My friend Tony immediately noticed something was off and asked me about it. Giving up yoga? He said, then told me everything that happened while we drank beer on the dock by the lake. You know, my Tammy went there too, he said. But I made her quit when I met that idiot Marcel, or whatever his name is. Marcel Bill, I corrected. Why did you force her to quit? He's just a petty, smug little brat who acts like he's God's gift to the whole world, especially to women. You know, this guy thinks he can sleep with any woman he meets. This guy probably sleeps with half the women who go there, and probably the men too. I wasn't sure whether to be angry or to laugh. Do you think he plays on both teams? Oh, I'm sure of it, Tony chuckled. I told Jude that he's probably gay. I laughed, and she replied, I think all handsome men are like that. Yes, all handsome men are indeed gay, but that doesn't matter. This guy is not that handsome. Have you ever seen him? No, I haven't met him yet. But brother, what are you doing? Get out of there. Nothing good will come of this. You're a cop, Tony exclaimed. Oh my God, didn't you check this guy? I shrugged. No, somehow I didn't think about it. I thought it was just yoga. I trust Jude. I thought she was just interested in a new hobby. She used to be interested in ceramics, and before that, decorative painting. We now have these painted chickens all over the house. I thought it was a harmless hobby, just a little interest in yoga and its teacher. Yoga teacher. There. And you know what? Tony leaned in, lowering his voice as if he was about to tell a secret. He is most likely not French at all. My family is from Louisiana. Everyone there speaks Creole, and I once spoke to him in Patois. This guy didn't understand anything. He said my accent was too strong and that I was pronouncing words incorrectly. It's complete nonsense. This type of Frenchie is no more French than French fries. I took a sip of beer, watching the sunset. Damn it, was I asleep all this time? Did I allow the fox to get into the henhouse? I thought. I needed to talk to Jude, but I knew she probably wouldn't want to discuss this with me. I'd have to tread carefully. On the way back, I decided it was time to wake up and handle this properly. I came up with a plan to get closer to Jude again and learn more about her yoga hobby. We had been driving in silence for about an hour when I suddenly spoke, quietly, unexpectedly for her. I want to apologize for making you cancel the open house. I'm sorry I had to do that. I thought about it all weekend and realized that this is important to you. I also want to thank you for going anyway, even though you didn't want to. I've missed you lately, and I was glad to spend time with you, even though I acted like a jerk all weekend. She looked at me, acknowledging what I had already guessed, and despite that, I answered without denying her mood. She smiled and took my hand. Thank you for saying that. I had a good time too. I missed you, and was glad to talk to Tony and Tammy. We should meet with them more often. Yes, I completely agree, I replied. Then, I took a deep breath. You know, I was thinking about how we could spend more time together. We're both busy, but I want to make time for us. Offer? She asked. Go to yoga with you, I said. I won't be able to attend classes as often as you, but I could probably make time for 1 or 2 classes a week. There was silence, broken only by the sound of the road. Her reaction surprised me, to put it mildly. You want to go to yoga class with me? She asked, more affirmatively than questioningly. Yes. It would give us something to do together, and I could start sharing your passion for what brings you so much joy. If you like it so much, maybe I will like it too. After a long pause, she finally answered. You see, I take advanced classes. You'd have to start at the beginner level, so we wouldn't even be there at the same time. I don't even think classes are held on the same days. Crap. Was that true, or did Jude just not want me near her in the yoga studio? Well, then it won't work, I said, but as I tried to process her reaction, another thought came to mind. You said we should hang out with the Clarks more often, right? Yes, I would like to. So why not have a party? We haven't invited friends over for a long time. A party? She asked, with a hint of doubt in her voice, as if she didn't fully understand what I was offering. Yeah, you know, when people get together, drink, eat, laugh, and have a good time. You're so funny, Jude replied. I know what a party is. This is a great idea. We could invite the Clarks, a few other neighbors, your friend Melissa, and her husband. What's his name? Dave. Yes, Dave. But it was Melissa who introduced you to yoga, wasn't it? Yes, I said. I made a mental note to talk to Dave about yoga and the teacher, Marcel. Then why don't you invite your friends from your yoga class to the party? We have enough space. Jude smiled and kissed my hand. You know, that sounds better and better. Sometimes you have good ideas. I smirked at her, noticing her playful sarcasm. And you can invite Marcel, I added. He's not my Marcel, she corrected me. Sorry, I forgot the word teacher. You can invite him too. I've never met him. Don't you think it's time for the 2 most important men in your life to meet? She took her hand away and crossed her arms over her chest. Why do you say that? He's not important to me. You and our son are the 2 most important men in my life. This jealousy of yours towards Marcel is unnecessary, and it's time for you to end it. Wow, honey, I said, trying to calm her down. I clearly went too far. I didn't mean anything bad. I just wanted to say that as your yoga teacher, he plays a significant role in your life. I want to meet him. Maybe I'll even like him. Well, Jude replied, looking at me intently. Think about it, I said, and ended the conversation there. We didn't talk much until we got home, and it was the most uncomfortable 45 minutes we'd had in a long time. That night, I tried to initiate intimacy with Jude, but she didn't respond right away. After some persistent attention, she finally gave in. I didn't enjoy it. My thoughts were far away. Finally, she went to bed without saying much. She didn't ask, she just decided the night was over. I left home early on Monday before Jude woke up. I needed to meet my partner. A lead had emerged in the investigation, but it wasn't confirmed. By lunchtime, I was sitting at my desk, thinking I might take a little interest in this yoga thing. The phone rang. It was Jude. She asked if I had a few minutes to talk, which immediately made me wary. Yes, actually, I do, I answered. What's happened? I thought about your party idea again, she explained. And I really like it. We haven't invited anyone for a long time. I was thinking of ordering catering so we don't spend all our time and energy on preparations. What do you think? I trust your taste, I replied. Do as you see fit. By the way, did you invite Marcel and the yogis? My partner, Detective Eduardo Martinez, was sitting next to me and started chuckling. Yes, I did, Jude replied. He said it sounded fun and he'd be happy to accept the invitation. Cool, I repeated. Is that all? Yes, that's all. I'll see you tonight then. Oh, Bill, are you going to be late today? Yes, most likely. We need to go through the victim's statement again. Why? Oh, nothing, she replied. I could sense there was something wrong in her voice. I just wanted to know if I need to cook dinner. No, I replied, as my thoughts wandered into dark corners where they shouldn't go. I'll get something here. Okay, bye, honey. I love you. I love you, Jude said, and hung up. As soon as I hung up, Martinez started laughing again. What kind of yogi is Marcel? Is this something like bear yoga? Shut up, I said, wincing. It's some kind of déjà vu, he chuckled. That joke's been used before. I rolled my eyes and shook my head. I hoped when I repeated it to Jude, it wouldn't sound as stupid. Go over the case again, I sharply demanded. Damn it, Bill, Martinez replied angrily. We've already been through this 20 times. It's already 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm exhausted. If we go over this again today, it won't help us catch this guy any faster. I didn't ask for your opinion, I said coldly, my gaze never leaving his. My eyebrows furrowed, and the muscles in my neck tensed, making me look like a gorilla ready to attack. Right after speaking with Jude, I received another call. Another crime had occurred. This time, the victim had been severely beaten. Martinez and I rushed to the hospital to take her statement. She had little time to speak before the medication put her into a drowsy state, but what she said matched the other cases. Okay, Martinez gave in. In each case, the suspect was at the woman's home when she returned. He wore a mask and latex gloves and used protection during the act. He did his thing once, apologized, then forced them to shower and put their bed linens in the washing machine with enough bleach to disinfect a whole building. He also smashed their mobile phones, and in one case, when a woman had a landline, he yanked it out of the wall before leaving. His height and weight are average, and we didn't find any physical traces, no DNA, nothing. What exactly did the victim say before he left? I asked. Something like, life sucks, and then you die, or something like that, Martinez replied. No, it was something else, I muttered, piecing things together in my mind. I pulled out my notebook and turned the pages. Here it is. Life is suffering. The sooner you understand this, the sooner you can find happiness. I've heard this somewhere before, Martinez said, shaking his head. How strange. This man just beat up a woman, and then he philosophizes in front of her. He's a real cold-blooded idiot. Of course, I replied, but in some ways, he's right. What's right? Martinez asked, perplexed. The fact is, life is suffering. The evening of the party arrived quickly. Jude had ordered catering from one of the trendy gastropubs that had opened in recent years and stocked up on enough wine and alcohol to keep the neighborhood entertained. She even hired a local guy to DJ for the night. We decided to have a cocktail hour, dinner, and casual conversation starting at 8 p.m. At 10 o'clock, the DJ would turn up the music, and our living room would transform into a dance floor. Jude started drinking around 6 p.m., wine at first, then moving on to margaritas as soon as the frozen margarita machine was ready. By the time the first guests arrived a little before 8 o'clock, she was already feeling relaxed and cheerful. The Clarks arrived first, as always, followed by several of her yoga friends and their companions. I made sure to introduce myself to everyone and offer drinks. By 8:30, Marcel still hadn't shown up, nor had Jude's best friend Melissa and her husband Dave. I was especially eager to talk to Dave that evening, so I was looking forward to their arrival. Finally, around 9 o'clock, I turned to Jude and asked, "Listen, honey, it looks like your yogi and your best friend have worked you up." I sat down next to her on the sectional couch in the living room. "Oh, he said he'd come around 10 o'clock to avoid all the socializing," Jude replied, slightly slurring her words as she took a sip of her margarita. "What about Melissa and Dave?" I asked. Her smile faded as she took another sip of her margarita. "Oh, they'll be here soon," she said, though it seemed as though she wasn't entirely sure. "You didn't invite them?" I asked, surprised. "I didn't invite you," she replied nonchalantly. "I thought she was your best friend," I said. Jude shrugged. "No more." Suddenly, Jude's eyes lit up, and a wide smile spread across her face. "He's here," she exclaimed, standing up and heading toward him as if she had forgotten about me. I watched, slightly shocked, as my wife embraced him and exchanged kisses on the cheek, once, twice, 3 times. I knew this was common in Europe, but damn, this is America, and Jude is my wife. I stood up and walked straight toward the yoga room. As I approached, I took in his appearance. Tony was right, nothing special. He was thin, with a short ponytail. Damn, I looked better than him, and I'd had my nose broken 3 times. I didn't wait for introductions. Jude didn't seem interested either. By the time I reached them, 4 other women had already gathered around him, hanging on his every word, as if he were some kind of messiah. As I approached, I heard Jude giggling and say, "Maybe later, we'll see how it goes." I stood tall, wanting to make an impression, 6 feet 2 inches and all 275 pounds of me. I spoke loudly, causing him to flinch. Jude turned to look at me in surprise. "Hello," I said, smiling. "You must be Marcel," I added, as friendly as any Texan could be, avoiding titles and simply addressing him by his first name. I extended my large hand toward him. "I'm Bill, Jude's husband. Welcome to our home." He glanced at Jude, then back at me, but didn't extend his hand. He looked a little nervous. "Sorry, I only kiss after at least 3 dates," I said, waving my open palm in the air with a wide, friendly smile. In Texas, we shake hands. That seemed to snap him back to reality, and Jude too stopped standing there in a daze. He extended his hand. I didn't try to crush it with my grip. That would have been rude. He already knew I could crush him like a bug if I wanted to. His grip was weak, but I held mine steady, maintaining the level of a professional handshake. "Oh, Bill," Jude said, finally finding her voice. "This is Yogi Marcel." "Marcel, this is my husband, Bill." She seemed nervous, stepping closer to me and taking my hand. "I already told him that, honey," I said, smiling and pulling her into a brief hug, sending a signal that I wasn't threatened by him. Marcel kissed Jude on the cheek, sending another signal. His voice was slightly high-pitched and nasal, and he radiated self-satisfaction through his manners, facial expressions, and speech. It was clear that this man had a very high opinion of himself. In my native language, there was a term for people like him. We called them Dodgers. From that moment on, in my eyes, he was no longer a Yogi or Marcel. He was just a Dodger. I thought to myself, you think you're clever, but you're not nearly as clever as you think you are. I was still holding his hand, and he tried to pull away, but I let go. "Ah, so you are the lucky one who is married to this beautiful creature," he said with a strong French or pseudo-French accent. "I envy you very much, monsieur. I hope that someday I will be lucky enough to find a wife like her." Jude moved next to me. "Well, this one is already taken, Dodger," I said, smiling widely. "You'll have to look for another one." There was an awkward pause. I let it linger for a few seconds, then laughed and gave Marcel a pat on the shoulder, just a little harder than I probably should have. "Just kidding, Dodger," I added. "What will you drink?" "Oh, Yogi only drinks French wine," my wife suggested. I wondered how she knew his preference for alcohol, but decided not to bring it up. I bought several bottles, especially for him. "Okay, then, let's go help me choose," I said. She was surprised. "I can tell which ones." "Better stay here and entertain the guests," I replied, pulling Jude's hand toward Marcel. The four women who had gathered around him immediately moved to take her place. They all seemed to be enjoying themselves. "Let's go," I said with a smile as she tried to resist. I pulled Jude along with me, and when we reached the kitchen, she pulled out a bottle of French red wine from our small wine refrigerator. The wine looked expensive. For me, expensive wine is something around $29, but this one looked much more expensive. I didn't embarrass myself by asking questions, but made a mental note to Google the price later. I took my time opening the bottle, trying to figure out a little more about what we had. "That was a very friendly greeting you gave Marcel," I said, spinning the corkscrew and imagining it in one of the Yogi's eyes. "Are you talking about the kissing?" she asked, more drunk than she realized. "Yes, I haven't seen that before," I answered, slowly turning the corkscrew, trying to keep my frustration in check. "He's French," she replied casually. "Kissing is normal, nothing special." "Is that true?" I asked, trying not to show my irritation. "There's a lot of things you don't know, Bill," she said, chuckling. "Lots of things." I stopped opening the bottle and handed her a bottle of water. "You need to drink this," I told her. When she set the bottle down without opening it, I picked it up, unscrewed the cap, imagining that I was twisting Marcel's neck with it, and handed it back to her. "Drink, or I won't let you drink anything for the rest of the evening." "Yes, sir," she replied, giving a mock salute before taking a sip of water. "So why didn't you invite Melissa and Dave?" I asked again, hoping for a real answer this time. She rolled her eyes and took another sip of water. "She's just a drama queen. I didn't want any drama tonight." "Drama?" I asked, pretending that I was struggling with the cork. "What kind of drama could she create?" "I don't really know myself," she replied. But she was causing trouble at the yoga studio, and Marcel told her she was no longer welcome there. I frowned, realizing I would have to contact Dave myself and hear their version of events. I made a note to do that on Monday. "What kind of problems could Melissa cause?" I asked. "She's a sweetheart and one of your best friend." "Damn it, wasn't she the one who introduced you to yoga?" I asked, trying to understand. Jude shrugged and took another sip of water. She seemed somewhat infatuated with Marcel, and I could tell she wanted something from him that he wasn't ready to give. So, he decided it was better for her not to come to the studio anymore. It didn't surprise me that Jude knew more than she was initially willing to admit. This only increased my suspicions. "Are you kidding?" I asked, with a hint of skepticism in my voice. "Are you saying Melissa wanted to cheat on Dave with him?" I pointed toward the other room, meaning her yoga room. Jude just smiled and raised her eyebrows. That's what she told me. Did she tell you she wanted to cheat on Dave? I asked, not fully believing it. Not exactly. She said she wanted to sleep with Yogi Marcel, Jude replied casually. I stared at my wife in disbelief. She screwed the cap back onto the water bottle, preparing to return to the party. I stopped her before she could leave. This is the second wife and student of the Dodger I've heard about who wants to cheat on their husbands with him, I said. Seems like this is a recurring theme with this guy. Should I start worrying? Jude came up to me, kissed me gently on the cheek with a sweet smile, and said, Darling, you have nothing to worry about. You're still my big Neanderthal. She placed the water bottle on the counter and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me with a sinking feeling in my stomach. I had a feeling I really did have something to worry about. As the evening wore on, the music got louder, and people started dancing. All night, I kept a close eye on Jude, not allowing her to disappear from my sight for even a moment. I'm a professional observer, so it was easy for me to keep track of her without making it seem like I was stalking her. When she sat, it was always next to the Dodger. When she danced, he was always nearby. They invariably came together for a few songs and then went their separate ways. Outwardly, they didn't seem to be there for each other, but I saw it in the looks they exchanged and the way she touched his hand. Jude continued drinking, and I could see how it was affecting her. Her reactions became slower, and she was a little unsteady on her feet. Even without music, I knew her limit with alcohol, and she had long since exceeded it. Then the music changed, and the DJ announced a block of slow romantic songs. Marcel pulled Jude toward him, pressing himself against her. She looked around quickly, not seeing me, and laced her fingers behind his neck. That was the last straw. I jumped out of my hiding spot and headed straight toward them. I placed my hand on the trickster's shoulder and patted him. Dance with me, I declared, my tone not asking but commanding. They both turned to face me. The Dodger grinned and said, after this block of songs, then turned back to my wife, his face inches from hers, his hands on her hips, holding her close. I grabbed his middle finger on his right hand and pulled him back. He flinched, but I kept pulling him away to separate them. I glared at him, ready to tear him apart. Now I will dance with my wife, I said. Marcel, find yourself another wife to dance with. I stepped between them and pulled Jude toward me, letting go of his hand. Jude wrapped her arms around my neck and swayed to the music. Why did you do that? She asked, her voice quiet and slightly hoarse. You're my wife, I whispered in her ear. I'll kill anyone who tries to take you away. He was just being nice, she said, snuggling closer to me. Great, I said. He should be afraid. We danced through the song, and when it ended, Jude tried to leave, but I didn't let her go. A block of romantic songs is playing now, I said. I reserve all the slow dances for myself. You know that. She nodded and laid her head on my shoulder. If he was just being nice, I said, then why did he cuddle up to you during the dance? Jude pulled her head back and stared at me surprised. He didn't, she started to say, but stopped short, realizing that I must have seen what happened when I separated them. It was accidental, she said, as if trying to justify it. This happens a lot when couples slow dance. You're not a couple, I reminded her. We are a couple, she said, her voice soft but firm. With those words, I grabbed her and pressed her closer to me, just like he did. Don't ever forget this. There was a pause in the music, and the DJ took a 15-minute break. Most of the guests gathered outside on the terrace to smoke or in the kitchen for snacks and drinks. I stayed in the kitchen, watching Jude and the trickster. They left through the living room, so I quickly slipped outside through the kitchen door. I greeted a couple of our friends at the fire pit, often glancing toward the far end of the deck. Jude and Marcel were sitting side by side on one of our lounge chairs in the shade. After a couple of minutes, Jude stood up, turned toward him, and probably gave him a glimpse of her dress neckline. I heard her quiet laugh from where I stood. Then she turned and swayed into the house. Marcel waited for about 60 seconds, then stood up and walked toward the door. I intercepted him just before he opened it, placing my hand on his arm. He seemed surprised to see me. We need to talk, Dodger, I said. What the hell do you want, man? He asked sharply, his French accent completely gone as he pulled his hand from my grip. Problem? I asked. No problem, he replied, his tone flat. Not yet. Let's sit down for a minute and talk. He looked at the door and then took a step back. I pointed to the table on the terrace and pulled out a chair for him. Sit down. It won't take long, and you can get back to your business. Reluctantly, he sat down. This is your home, and I am your guest, he said, drinking the remaining wine with a slight French accent. Where exactly in France did you grow up? I suddenly asked. He looked at me, and I took a moment to collect my thoughts before speaking in French. Although I hadn't used the language in years, I wanted to make sure my pronunciation was clear. I studied French for several years and can communicate quite well, I explained. If it's more convenient for you, I can speak French. I could see him starting to sweat as I spoke. I studied French in high school and university for several years. I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but I can converse adequately. Shall we speak in French? He scoffed. Your accent is so bad that I can't understand half of what you say, he said contemptuously, then added in French, "Mais fait, et génère dans le pantalon," in parlant français. I wasn't entirely sure, but I thought he said something like, we can speak French if it makes you feel bigger in your pants. Well, maybe he really does speak French, I thought, but that doesn't make him French. I noticed you and Jude have a special relationship, I said, trying to shift the conversation. He shrugged. Jude is a beautiful woman and a kind soul. She's a great student and will make a great yoga instructor. Did she tell you that I asked her to become my assistant and help run my studio? He added casually. Frankly, his words shocked me. Jude hadn't mentioned anything about it. I tried to keep my surprise in check, but I'm sure I failed miserably. Oh, I guess she didn't tell you anything, he added with a grin. I wanted to punch him and wipe that grin off his face. Maybe you could help me, I said, abruptly changing tactics. Should I help you? He asked, clearly intrigued. How can I help you? Jude has seemed like a stranger lately, I explained, making up a story as I went along. I only had the basics of a plan, but I hadn't realized I would need this course of action. You probably see her more often than I do. I see her often, yes, he agreed. I'm worried that she might be going to cheat on me, I said quickly, then added, or something close to it. He looked at me. I love my wife more than anything in the world. We've been married for a long time, and she's not just a wife to me. She is my life. If you've noticed anything, I'd really appreciate this information. Maybe I can figure out what's going on and stop it before it's too late. Do you want me to help you spy on her? He asked, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Spying is too harsh a word, I said. Just, if you happen to notice something, it would really help if you tell me. Of course, he replied. I can assure you that she is never with any other man but me. Those words didn't reassure me. I nodded, trying to hide my frustration. Listen, Dodger, I said, standing up and towering over him. If anyone ever sleeps with Jude, I will kill them. I'll put 2 bullets in their head, then take their body into the forest and leave it there, weighted down in the swamp. He stared at me, his mouth hanging open. I shook his hand firmly. It's only a matter of time until I figure out who's trying to seduce her. When I find out, that man and I will have a conversation somewhere no one can hear his screams. If it turns out he's been with her, he's dead. He nodded silently. I turned and went back into the house. Jude wasn't in any of the rooms on the first floor. That was a bad sign. I went upstairs and found her lying on our bed, wearing only a satin robe that was open, revealing her body. She was unconscious. I covered her with a blanket, and just as I was about to leave, she quietly grabbed my hand without opening her eyes and whispered, Marcel. Her voice trailed off into a soft hum. I left the room, heading back downstairs, and just in time to see the trickster walk out the front door. I didn't think I scared him too much when I interrupted their dance, but now, I hoped he was genuinely intimidated. I found the DJ outside. He was holding something in his hand. You know this is illegal, I said, taking it from him. I could arrest you for possession, but I'll just confiscate it. Pack up your equipment and leave. The party's over. But I still have 1 block left, he protested. Yes, I know, I replied. It's okay. I'll pay you for a full performance, but the party's already over. Go home and stay away from this nonsense. He was about to respond when I pressed the cold metal of my gun against his ribs. What did I say I would do to anyone who slept with my wife? We didn't do anything, Jude said hastily, her voice shaking. I swear. Is it true? I asked, raising my eyebrows. Nothing. Yes, nothing, she confirmed. Trickster, I said calmly. I'm going to move to the other side of the table. If you try to run or make a scene, I will shoot. Understood? He nodded. I slipped out of the booth and moved around to sit opposite her. For the first time, Jude looked me directly in the eyes, but then she looked away, full of shame. I placed an envelope on the table and took out a folder. I removed a photograph and placed it in front of her. The photo showed Jude in Marcel's arms as they kissed. Nothing, huh? I asked. Where did you get this? Jude asked, her voice trembling. So, you're not denying it, I said, showing her another photo. It showed them sitting together on the couch in Marcel's office. Probably your private yoga lessons, I said. What's the name of this pose? Marcel clearly panicked as he looked at the photographs. I think he was stunned that I had them. He was probably wondering what else I knew. What about this one? I asked, showing another photo. It showed Marcel on the same couch, with a woman who had hair similar to Jude's. Is this you? It's not me. Jude shouted, grabbing the photo. I swear to God, it's not me. Is it true? I asked, keeping my tone calm. I took out another photo. Oh my God, Jude exclaimed. She looked first at the photograph and then at Marcel. Who is this woman? She turned to me. It's not me. You must. She looked at the photograph in front of her, her face clearly visible. I silently placed the photo in front of my wife. As she looked at it, her eyes grew wider, and tears began to form and slowly rolled down her face. How could you? She whispered. The next day, Jude had a severe hangover and couldn't remember much about the events from the previous night. I didn't bring up her calling me Marcel or her behavior at the party. I also didn't ask about the offer to become a yoga instructor and help run a studio. I decided to wait and see if she would bring it up herself. Over the next few weeks, things between us became a little warmer, like they were before. Jude spent more time at home, as some of her yoga classes had been canceled, leaving her with less time to meet with Marcel. Maybe I had managed to scare him off, and with a little luck, everything would return to normal. I didn't rush her and tried to give Jude space to sort out her feelings. Unfortunately, she seemed irritable and moody, often taking it out on me. When she wasn't angry, she became distant. By the second week, I felt like this had gone on long enough. I had made up my mind about our future, and Thursday seemed like the right time to discuss it with her. I called Jude and asked if she wanted to spend the evening together. To my surprise, she immediately agreed without hesitation. When I got home, Jude was in the kitchen, serving homemade chili. Hello, darling, she called out when I entered. I thought we could eat now, so we have more time later for whatever we want to do. She winked as she said this. So what happened? What did you want to talk about? She asked before I could respond, interrupting me. I also have news that I want to celebrate with you. Can you grab us a couple of beers? I hadn't expected her to have news of her own, so I was a little surprised. I had planned to do most of the talking tonight. My goal was to finally address the situation with Marcel and move forward. The fact that she wanted to celebrate something gave me a bad feeling. Of course, I answered, taking 2 bottles of beer from the refrigerator, opening them, and handing one to her. Hold it, I said, taking a sip of my beer. I've been really stressed out with this case I'm working on. I feel like the guy from Lethal Weapon, too old for this stuff. I'm tired, Jude. Tired of the stress. Tired of being away from home so much. I miss our life, the way it was before. I want to get out of this. Jude looked at me, concerned and curious. What do you mean? Get out? Quit? I applied for a transfer to the police academy to become an instructor, I explained. At the end of the month, I'll stop investigating. I want to take a short vacation and go somewhere for a couple of weeks. I need to restore our relationship. This is long overdue, and I hope we can reconnect to remind ourselves why we fell in love in the first place. She looked at me for several seconds without reacting. And what does that mean, exactly? She asked. This means I'll have a regular job from 9 to 5. No more late shifts, no more days off work. I'll be able to spend more time with you and make up for all those years when I neglected you and us. She nodded, but I could tell she was deep in thought. I was a good judge of people and could usually read their reactions easily, but right now, I couldn't understand what she was thinking. You don't look happy, I said. She smiled tightly. No. Of course, I'm glad, she said quickly. I'm just surprised. Being a detective was everything you dreamed of. I'm surprised you're ready to leave. I'm leaving it for us, I said. You are more important to me than any job, anything, or anyone. I emphasized the last words, trying to convey the hidden meaning. She looked down nervously, examining her hands as if deep in thought. When she didn't speak, I encouraged her. Well, what's your news? She hesitated for a moment, taking a long sip of her beer before continuing. Marcel suggested that I get certified as a yoga instructor so I can teach classes at the studio and become his assistant manager. It would be a paid position. I know you probably think it's silly, but it means a lot to me, and I really want to do it. Great, I said, adding, I'm proud of you. I'm sure you'll do great. Jude finally told me what Marcel had already revealed to me at the party. It took her a long time to confess, and I was hoping that maybe Marcel had changed his mind or withdrawn the offer. But as soon as he told me about it, I had been thinking about it. Refusing or trying to talk her out of it would only push her further away. The last thing she expected was for me to support her. She looked at me, puzzled. "You really don't mind?" she asked. "I thought you wouldn't like it if I agreed." "This means I'll have to spend more time with Marcel and less time at home," she said. "I know," I answered. "And that suits you?" "It suits me," I lied. "I trust you." She jumped up, sat on my lap, and began kissing me. "I love you, Bill," she said. At that moment, she completely stunned and puzzled me. "So you won't mind if I go to the certification course?" "It's a little expensive, $5,000, she added, looking at me like a child asking her father for a pony. I almost choked. $5,000 for the course? It takes 2 weeks, she explained. "Yes, but still, that's $5,000 a week," I said, still processing. "Yes, but the course is at a retreat in Costa Rica," she added. "Wow," I said, raising my hands as if to pause the conversation. 2 weeks in Costa Rica?" I asked, dumbfounded. "Yes. 2 weeks of intense training and classes all day, every day. At the end of the retreat, I'll be fully certified by the International Institute of Yoga Studies and will be able to teach accredited classes in the yoga world. Bill, this is a big deal. Usually, the waiting list for this is about 2 years, but Marcel managed to use his connections to get us in." Alarm bells started ringing in my head. I was speechless and couldn't think of anything to say. "When will this be?" I asked. "I just told you," she said. "I won't be able to go until next month. I'm busy with this until I start a new job." "Oh, that's okay, honey," she added. "I'll go alone." "I didn't mean that you should come with me," she clarified. "But you said, us," I said, trying to understand. "You said that Marcel included us." "Oh," Jude stared at her hands, blushing. "I meant us, like me and Marcel," she admitted, looking down as if she couldn't or wouldn't look me in the eyes. "Wait," I said, trying to remain calm. "Are you going to go to a resort in Costa Rica with Marcel alone for 2 weeks?" "Well, yes," she answered nervously. "Marcel is my mentor and sponsor, and he needs to be there to support me." "Can I go with you and support you?" I asked. "No, it's only for people who do yoga," she explained. "You'd probably be bored out of your mind there." I took a sip of beer. Looks like I didn't scare Marcel off enough, I thought. "When is this?" I asked. "Next month, starting on the 23rd, she answered. She opened the resort's website on her tablet to show me the place, which looked amazing, like the perfect romantic getaway. I made a note to explore the place later. "I see," I said dryly. "Are you upset?" she asked. "Rather disappointed," I said. "I love you, Jude. You know that, right?" "I know," she said, sliding off my lap and sitting down in her chair, looking disappointed. "Why?" I asked, my voice rising. "You're going to a romantic tropical paradise with another man for 2 weeks, and you expect me not to be affected by this? I'm disappointed that you think this is normal, that you think this is okay. I'm disappointed in what this says about our marriage." "Bill," she began, trying to calm me down. "It's only 2 weeks, and it's a work trip. You've gone on business trips for longer periods, and I never made you feel guilty about it." "That's different," I objected. "I didn't go to a resort for 2 weeks with a young, attractive woman who was clearly trying to seduce me." "Bill," she replied sharply, "Marcel is not trying to seduce me. This is a purely professional relationship. That's it." I finished my beer, and we both fell silent as Jude flipped through pictures of the resort. I noticed that most of the photos were of couples in romantic settings, with no yoga classes in sight. Jude had that dreamy look on her face again. I sighed slowly and sadly. "So, when and where do you want me to be notified?" I asked. "Notified?" she repeated, confused. "About the divorce," I said, not holding back. "Divorce?" she screamed, looking at me in disbelief. "What do you mean, divorce?" "I mean the dissolution of marriage," I said calmly. "This usually happens when one spouse cheats on the other." "I know what divorce is, Bill," she exploded. "No one is cheating on you. Why are you even talking about divorce?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're going to go away for 2 weeks to a romantic tropical paradise with Marcel," I said. "He's not my boyfriend," she exclaimed. "This is a certification course. I'll be working there with Marcel." "Were you going to rent 1 room for 2? I asked. "Did he suggest taking 1 suite instead of 2 rooms to save money?" Her surprised expression confirmed my suspicions. "Well, Marcel is paying for everything," she objected. "I have to meet him halfway on expenses." So it's still luxury, I said with a grin. Yes, she said, but he'll sleep in one part, and I'll sleep in the other. I told you, I said, this is a purely platonic relationship. I don't care if it's platonic, sophisticated, or Pythagorean, I said firmly. But I'm not going to be married to a woman who goes on vacation alone with another man. With another man? And you plan to share a room with him? But you said you wanted me to get the certification, I said, my voice strained. Yes, she agreed, pleading, but not like this. But Bill, she objected, that's how it's done. You don't understand yoga. You just don't get it. They don't focus on things like you do. I noticed there was a division in her words, as if I was the only one worried and concerned about the situation. So, are you planning to spend time with him too? I asked, my voice tinged with anger. No, she screamed, her voice rising in frustration. You're twisting my words. I didn't say that. I simply meant that they don't think of these trips in the same way. It's about yoga, connecting with nature, and spiritual unity. It's not about anything else. Great, I said, sarcastically. Sounds like a wonderful trip. Since it will be next month, I'll already be starting my new job and could take some time off. I'll go with you. I'll be your roommate instead of Marcel, and I'll pay the difference. Let him take his own room. At night, I'll be by your side, as it should be between husband and wife. This won't do, she protested. Why not? I asked. This seems like the ideal solution for everyone. You can study all day, Marcel can support you, and most importantly, you and I can be together at night, like spouses should be. You'll be bored all day, she explained. I won't be able to spend time with you. I laughed, trying to mask my frustration. This is a tropical paradise. I won't be bored. You won't have to look after me. I'm a grown man, I said. I wanted to take a long vacation. This fits perfectly. We can combine your course with our holiday and stay for a week or two after your training is over. This is not necessary, she screamed. Forget it. I hope that for once, you would be mature and accept this new part of me. I wish you would trust me enough to let me do something like this without interfering with your instincts. Wait, I said, trying to clarify. Are you willing to cancel your entire trip and give up your certification just because I want to go with you? I won't interfere with your class or certification. The only thing my presence could disrupt is your and Marcel's vacation and shared accommodation. So being alone with him for 2 weeks is more important to you than getting the certification? I asked, trying to understand. Of course not, she snapped. This is ridiculous. Then the choice is simple, I said. You can get the certification if I go with you and we stay married. Or you can go with Marcel, stay in the same suite, and get a divorce. It's up to you. Don't be ridiculous, she exclaimed. I didn't say I wanted to go with him. Then this is just an excuse to be with him, I said. If you can't go with him and you'd rather give up the certification, then we have a bigger issue here. You're talking nonsense, she said, frustrated. I wish I hadn't even mentioned this. I wish I could forget it too, I replied quietly. But I can't. We have problems, Jude. We hardly spend any time together, and when we do, we argue. You're always at the studio with Marcel. I want my wife back. I want our life back. This marriage isn't what I envisioned. Are you serious? She asked, her voice trembling. You want to divorce me because I found something that makes me happy besides you? No, I answered, shaking my head. I don't want to divorce you because you found something that makes you happy. I want to divorce you because you found someone else who makes you happy. Her hands shook. Her mouth opened as if she wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, she managed to speak. I don't want to get a divorce, I said softly. I love you, and I want a wife who is faithful to me in every way, someone who will stay with me until the end of her days. I paused, looking at her. I thought that was you. Now, I'm not so sure anymore. It's me, she replied, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. It was always me. Nothing has changed. You've changed, I corrected her. At that moment, my phone rang, persistently and loudly. It was the work phone. If it had been personal, I would have ignored it, but I couldn't afford that luxury. I was on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Reluctantly, I picked up the phone. Yes? I answered. Martinez, came the voice on the other end. Another crime. This time it's bad. She's dead. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. How is it possible, in this day and age, with DNA, cameras at every turn, and forensic techniques, that we're chasing a ghost? I muttered, frustration creeping into my voice. 8 crimes, and the level of brutality has only increased. No clues, no leads, and almost no evidence. The criminal is meticulous, leaving almost nothing behind. And we don't have a single witness, Martinez explained, his voice heavy with the weight of the situation. We've got 2 small DNA samples from 2 different crime scenes. They match, but they don't lead us to a suspect. It's only a matter of time, but how much longer? Martinez continued. And now, victim number 9, he added. I felt my heart sink further. This case was consuming me. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was my fault. If I had worked harder, focused more, maybe this wouldn't have happened. My problems at home were affecting my work, I realized. I was one of the best investigators in the department, but right now, I had nothing. An innocent woman was dead, and I felt responsible. I arrived at the scene, stopping at room 27 of the Dewdrop Inn, a motel on the outskirts of town, a place known for its shady clientele. By the time I arrived, the forensic team was already at work, preparing the victim's body for removal. I stepped inside the room. The place was eerily quiet, except for the sound of the team's movements. I glanced at the victim's face, and my heart stopped. A cold chill ran through me. I had seen her before. The familiar features made my breath catch in my throat. Martinez, I shouted, my voice shaky. He walked out from the room. Do you have the victim's documents? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He nodded carefully, his eyes meeting mine. Yes. Her bag was in the corner. Driver's license in the name of Melissa Goodman, from Allen. This is your area, Bill. Do you know her? Martinez asked. Yes, I do, I replied, feeling the weight of the situation. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do in my career, but I couldn't let anyone else tell Dave. I had to do it myself. I went in his house. He was there and opened the door when he saw me. Bill, what are you doing here? He asked, his voice laced with concern. Is something wrong with Melissa? What happened? Is she okay? Questions poured out of him faster than I could answer. Dave, can we sit down? I asked, motioning for him to come inside. He stepped back, allowing me in, though his concern never left his face. Of course, but where is Melissa? Is she okay? We sat down in his formal living room. Everything was in perfect order, and I realized it was used as rarely as ours. I took a deep breath. Dave, there's no easy way to say this, I began. Melissa is dead. What? He blurted out. Don't joke like that, Bill. This is serious. I'm sorry, Dave, but it's true. Her body was found a couple of hours ago. This is impossible, he shouted. She went to a bachelorette party with Jude and the yoga girls. He immediately jumped up, grabbing his phone. I'll call her, he said, but I gently stopped him. Dave, she's been identified. She had her bag with her, her driver's license. I saw her myself. It was Melissa. He shook his head, as if in disbelief. There must be some mistake. I stood up, poured him a glass of bourbon, and handed it to him. His hands were shaking as he took it, staring at the glass before drinking it all in one gulp. Are you sure it's her? He asked, his voice cracking. Yes, I replied, my own heart heavy. I can't believe it. How did this happen? Was it an accident? Was she drunk? He asked. I poured myself a glass and drank, feeling the familiar burn. No, I said. We believe she was killed. Killed? What are you talking about? For what? Who could do this? He demanded, rising from his chair once again. I could see he was on the edge of a breakdown. I placed my hand on his shoulder, trying to calm him. Sorry, Dave. You said she was going to spend the evening with her friends. Did she say where exactly? I don't know. Some new restaurant on the square in McKinn, he replied, staring off into space. Ask Jude. She was with him. Dave, Jude was with me. She hasn't spoken to Melissa in weeks, I explained, watching his expression fall. Maybe Melissa had someone else. No way, he shouted, the grief evident in his eyes. Where is she? I have to see her. I want to see my wife. I nodded. I'll take you to her, but I need to ask, where were you all evening? He looked at me with rage. What? You think I have something to do with this? No, I answered quickly. But in murder cases, spouses are always considered suspects. Someone will definitely ask you this. Better me than someone else. Dave's eyes filled with tears. He didn't try to wipe them away as they streamed down his face. I worked late. Took the pizza and went home, he said, his voice breaking. I was waiting for Melissa. Oh my God, he choked, falling to his knees. She will never come back. He let out a long, heart-wrenching cry that pierced me to my core. I led Dave to the morgue. He was allowed to see Melissa's body, but when he tried to touch her, he had to be restrained. It was the most painful thing I had ever witnessed, both in my career and in my life. The pain in his eyes, the loss, was overwhelming. He had lost the love of his life. I couldn't help but think of Jude. Was it over between us? Maybe it was too late to save our marriage. Could I stop what was happening, or should I just accept it? Did I even want it back? As I was about to take Dave back, Martinez pulled me aside. The forensic experts found a lot of prints, and there's more, he said in a low voice. The doctor ran tests and found biological DNA on Melissa. I corrected him. Her name was Melissa. Sorry, Martinez replied. But it's unusual for our criminal to be so careless. They've always used protection before. Starting to make mistakes, I said, my mind racing. He's getting too confident. Are you okay? Martinez asked, his voice filled with concern. You're not yourself. Our criminal is too careful to leave evidence like that. Maybe you need to take a step back. You're too close to this. I sighed heavily. It's personal, Martinez. This is personal. I've been your partner for more than 10 years, he said, his voice softening. What's going on? I knew Martinez wouldn't let up. With a heavy heart, I confessed my suspicions about Jude and her yoga instructor. Brother, this is tough, he said quietly. I've heard about those yoga instructors. They get into women's heads with all sorts of tricks. Like Tantra or something. Tantra, I corrected him. Yeah, that's it. Do they get into their heads? I can't believe Jude would do this to you, brother. Are you sure? Not really, I admitted. These are just suspicions, but they're consuming me. I think more about what Jude is doing than my work. What's his name? This guy? Martinez asked. Marcel, I replied. But don't get involved. I'll deal with him myself. Martinez looked at me, worried. I'll cover you if you need an alibi, or anything. I nodded. Thanks, but I won't need that. A 3,000-acre ranch in West Texas, Martinez said, his voice cold. Let's bury that idiot there, and no one will find the body. I couldn't tell if he was serious, but knowing Martinez, I realized he just might be. I promised him I wouldn't do anything reckless and that I'd keep my personal problems in check. As he left, he shouted back, call me if you change your mind. I picked up Dave, and we drove back. He was silent for most of the trip, but then he spoke, his voice tight. I can't go home, Bill. I can't be there. Can you take me to a hotel? His eyes were distant, his face pale. I don't think I can sleep, but I can't face her things at home. Of course, I replied. You can stay with us for the night. No, he said quietly. I want to be alone. I nodded, understanding. I drove him to a nearby in-law hotel, and when we pulled up to the front door, he let out a deep sigh. Melissa used to say that life is suffering, he said, his voice low and hollow. The words hit me like a punch to the chest, almost stopping my heart. I hadn't understood what they meant until now. What did you say? I asked, barely able to believe what I was hearing. Life is suffering, he repeated. It's some kind of Buddhist expression. She learned it in the yoga studio. Her instructor used to say it during class. My mind began to race, frantically trying to connect the dots. You said Melissa continued going to the studio, right? Yeah, he replied, his voice wavering. She loved those damn activities. With Marcel? I asked, the question lingering in the air. Yes, he replied, his voice cracking. With Marcel. 3 times a week, Dave said, his voice trembling. Why do you think her death had something to do with the studio? He was desperately trying to hold on to some hope. I tried to steer him away from that thought. No, I said gently, I'm just trying to understand what Melissa was doing. We need to consider all possible angles. Try to rest, I added, hoping to ease his mind. He nodded and got out of the car, but he seemed to want to say something else before changing his mind. I watched him walk into the hotel, then drove home as fast as I could. It was almost 4 a.m. when I got back, but I went straight to the bedroom and woke up Jude. She didn't protest, immediately getting up to start the coffee. I needed answers, but I wasn't ready to tell her about Melissa yet. Jude, you mentioned that Melissa stopped going to yoga classes. When did that happen? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It was a couple of months ago, she replied, her tone neutral. She had an argument with Marcel, and since then, she stopped going. She hasn't been back to the studio at all. Did she ever mention anything about that to you? I asked, my curiosity growing. No, Jude said, giving me a curious look. Why do you ask? I hesitated for a moment, just trying to figure things out. Have you ever heard the phrase life is suffering at the studio? I asked carefully, hoping to gain some insight. Yes, Jude replied. Marcel, the instructor, often talks about it. Buddha said that life is suffering. It's the most common translation of the Sanskrit word dukkha. It means several things, but mostly pain, suffering, and dissatisfaction. It's part of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. She paused and looked at me, concerned. Why do you ask? Are you interested in Buddhism? I nodded slowly. Very interested, I said. Then, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. Do you think it's possible that Melissa had an affair with Marcel? I watched Jude closely, bracing myself for her reaction. To my surprise, she didn't react at all. She simply took a sip of her coffee, then set it down before responding calmly. No, she said, her voice steady. Not the slightest chance. Why are you so sure? I asked, needing to understand her certainty. Because he swore to me that there was nothing between them, she said, her tone firm. And I believe him. I felt a tightness in my chest. Jude, you trust people too much, I said quietly. You have no idea what people are capable of. Jude, why do you trust him so much? Why simply believe everything he says? I asked, struggling to understand. Jude paused, her face serious. Bill, she replied, I haven't told you everything about the reasons why Melissa and I stopped being friends. I didn't want to upset you, so I kept it to myself. I felt a familiar tightness in my stomach, a pang of anxiety. Go ahead, tell me, I said, bracing myself for what was coming. Melissa was obsessed with Marcel, Jude continued, her voice tinged with frustration. Like a real fan, she followed him everywhere. She'd get jealous if he paid attention to other women in class. She paused, clearly uncomfortable. I asked him once if they were close, and he swore they weren't. He said she made advances towards him several times, but he rejected her. It got so bad that one day, she attacked me while I was taking a private lesson from him. She accused me of sleeping with Marcel. Jude fell silent, blushing and avoiding eye contact. Did you sleep with him? I asked quietly, my heart pounding. Bill, she exclaimed indignantly, I told you, he never touched me. Okay, continue, I said, nodding for her to go on. After that, she continued, I told Melissa the same thing I told you. That seemed to calm her down, and she started to distance herself. But then something strange happened. She asked if I would like to sleep with Marcel, herself, and invited the three of us to spend the night with him. I was shocked. She suggested that? I asked, my voice full of disbelief. A real friend would never ask me to cheat on my husband. Exactly, Jude replied. After that, Marcel kicked her out of the studio, and since then, I haven't spoken to her. I watched Jude carefully, trying to gauge her sincerity. I had no reason to doubt her, but I had to remain cautious. I changed the subject, knowing that soon enough, the news about Melissa would leak to the media, and Jude would find out that I had already known. I was preparing for her to be angry with me. I took a deep breath, then said, Jude, Melissa is dead. Her face went pale. What did you say? She asked, her voice shaking. Melissa is dead, I repeated, swallowing hard. They killed her. My God, Jude whispered, her face twisted in shock. When? I raised my hands. I can't go into details, honey. We think this might be connected to a series of crimes I'm investigating, but we're not sure yet. Something doesn't add up, and it looks like Melissa might have been involved with someone, her lover. Jude's eyes widened. Lover? She asked, shocked. Then, as if all the pieces of a puzzle had clicked together, a new understanding crossed her face. Wait, so that's why you asked about her and Marcel? Do you think he could have been involved in her murder? I could sense Jude's anger rising. I'm just doing my job, Jude, I told her firmly. I have to consider all possibilities. I understand, she replied, her voice softening. She stood up and hugged me. I'm sorry I yelled at you. We stood there for several moments, embracing, and I allowed myself to hold my wife, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. I love you, I whispered, trying not to cry. I love you too, Jude whispered back. Underscore 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 the following day. I was running on 30 hours without sleep when I walked into the Happy Life yoga studio. Jude's car was parked outside, so I expected to see her, but the studio was eerily quiet. I checked the class schedule on the wall. The next lesson was starting in 45 minutes. I noticed a door near the bathrooms with a sign that read private area. I assumed it was Marcel's office. I knocked loudly, then tried the door. It was locked. Minutes passed before I heard the sound of a lock turning. The door swung open, and Marcel appeared, quickly closing it behind him. "Bill," he exclaimed loudly, clearly surprised to see me. "What are you doing here? Have you come for Jude?" "No," I replied, my voice steady. "I need to talk to you about something important. Do you have a couple of minutes?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, of course. Can we talk in my office? It's a delicate matter, and I'd prefer to speak privately." I followed him to the door of his office. He hesitated again, looking back as though trying to delay me. I pushed past him, entering the office. "Jude isn't here," I said, scanning the room. The office was empty, but I could still smell the light fragrance of Jude's favorite perfume. A large sofa sat by the desk, and 2 yoga mats were laid out on the floor. One of them I was certain belonged to Jude. "How can I help?" Marcel asked, leaning back in his chair. He didn't know I was a cop. Jude had kept that part of my life a secret from her friends and acquaintances. I had expected that Martinez would be visiting Marcel for questioning, so I decided to take the opportunity to check a few things myself. "Do you remember our conversation at the party?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "I asked you to keep an eye on Jude and make sure no one tried to seduce her." "Yes," he replied with a smug grin. "You asked me to spy on her for you." "To be honest," I said, "I didn't see anyone flirting with her. I'm just more worried." I looked around his office, trying to keep my thoughts focused. That's when I noticed a security camera mounted on the wall. It was aimed directly at the sofa, not the door or the table. This struck me as odd, especially after everything I had learned about Melissa. I added, "Yes, it's terrible news." He nodded, but didn't show much emotion. "Jude told me about it this morning. I'm very sorry for her family. So, you can see why I'm concerned about who my wife is dating," I continued. "Of course," he nodded, "certainly. I'll keep an eye on her for you. You can rest assured." I didn't need him watching her at this moment. Just then, the door opened and Jude entered the office, looking slightly out of breath. "Bill," she said with a smile, "what are you doing here?" "Oh, I was nearby and saw your car," I replied. "I thought I'd come in and see if you wanted to have lunch." As an investigator, I had to be quick with plausible stories. "Oh," she said, glancing briefly at Marcel, "I've already had a snack." She seemed a little uncomfortable. I stood up, ready to leave. I couldn't help but feel a bit nauseous at the thought of what she might have just eaten. It was a struggle to hold back the disgust, but I wondered if she was feeling the same way too. "Oh, yes," I said, turning to Marcel. "By the way, Jude and I were discussing a trip to Costa Rica and the idea of going with a yoga instructor." I paused, trying to keep my tone casual. "I support her, but I think it would be inappropriate for you to share a room with her, so if she decides to go, I'll accompany her, and we'll share a room together. This way, there's no chance of any misunderstandings." Marcel started to grin when I mentioned it, but the grin never fully formed. I could see that he understood the message loud and clear. I smiled back, deliberately showing my own possessiveness. "I'll leave you two alone so you can continue whatever you were doing," I said. I kissed Jude on the cheek, perhaps a bit more pointedly than usual, and left. It was only after I walked out that I realized I might have kissed her on the lips, and the thought made me feel uneasy. As I walked to the parking lot, I spotted her car and stopped to attach a GPS tracker under the rear bumper. The night was pitch black, the sky overcast, and there was no moon. I was dressed in black, with gloves and a ski mask, which helped me blend into the shadows. I kept my eye on the security camera positioned at the corner of the building. It slowly rotated back and forth. When the camera turned away, I dashed to the back entrance of the Happy Life yoga studio. A large dumpster in the corner of the building hid me from the camera's view as it turned back toward me. I quickly disabled the security system and picked the lock, silently slipping inside. The interior was dark, but I knew my way around. I found myself in a small curtained alcove at the back of Marcel's private office. Well, now it was clear how Jude had managed to slip out earlier. When I had come earlier that day, she must have used the back door to escape, then ran around the building and entered through the front entrance. Not a bad move for someone trying to keep something hidden. I pressed myself against the back wall of the office and used a mop to knock the cheap security camera off its mount. It was a Bluetooth camera that broadcast an image somewhere to the cloud. I stomped on it until I was sure it wouldn't broadcast anything anymore. Then, I sat down at Marcel's desk and turned on his computer. I hoped he wasn't too concerned about physical safety. I touched the mouse, and the screen came to life, revealing a Windows desktop cluttered with folders. So, he really wasn't that worried about physical safety, I thought. I clicked through the folders on the desktop and found one labeled Camera Images. It could have been easier, I mused. I opened the folder and saw many subfolders, each named after a woman. Marcel seemed to be meticulous and very organized. I took the USB flash drive from my keychain, inserted it into the open slot on the front of his computer, and copied the contents of that folder to the drive. As I scrolled through the list, my finger paused when I saw a folder labeled Jude. I opened it and found it filled with photographs and video clips. I set the view mode to show large icons so I could preview all the files at a glance. Most of them were photographs of Jude in various states of undress, taken in different locations like the restroom and changing areas. There were even photos of her in the restroom looking at herself in the mirror. What kind of person would do this? I thought, enraged. This idiot had obviously placed hidden cameras in places where he shouldn't have. I saw an icon of a video labeled Jude on the toilet and double-clicked it. It turned out to be a 3-minute clip, showing her walking in and pulling the door closed behind her. I was furious as I scanned through the files, but I didn't have time to review everything. I needed to analyze the files more thoroughly when I got home. After closing the folder, I quickly checked the contents of Marcel's desktop and hard drive, but I didn't find anything else of interest. I went back to the camera images folder and scrolled through it again, searching for something specific. Finally, I found it in a folder labeled M. Inside, there was a folder called Melissa. It contained a significantly larger amount of files compared to Jude's folder, many of them videos. I started scrolling through them, then sorted by date. The very first file was dated 2 weeks before Melissa's death. I clicked on it, and the video began to play. The footage showed an empty office at first, but then Marcel appeared, followed by Melissa. They had a conversation, and while the video provided strong evidence, I knew I couldn't use it in court without a proper warrant. Frustrated, I quickly closed the file and checked the rest of the folders, but found nothing else of significance. I removed the flash drive from the computer and tucked it deeper into my pocket, not wanting to risk losing it. I scanned the office one last time, but nothing caught my eye. I had been in there for about 10 minutes and knew it was time to leave. I carefully locked the door behind me, then waited by the dumpster for the camera to turn away again. As soon as it did, I made my way across the parking lot and got into my car, heading home. On the drive, I called Martinez. "I hope you have a good reason for calling me this early," he grumbled. "Have you solved the problem? Should we go to Poncho?" "No," I replied, "but I may have evidence linking Marcel to at least one victim, and maybe more." "What evidence? And how did you get it?" he asked. "Let's just say it can't be used in court yet, but I know where to look if I get a warrant." Marcel installed hidden cameras in the women's locker room and restroom. "At least this way, we can nail him down. We need enough for a judge to sign a search warrant," Martinez said. "Did you find anything else?" "Yes, good news. I went back and talked to Angela Chambers. You were right. She used to visit the Happy Life studio for several months. She said she had to leave because her boyfriend caught her having an affair with Marcel. That's 2 victims connected to him. But that's still not enough for a warrant," I replied. "We need more. Go back and talk to each of the victims. See if they've had any other contact with him or the studio. Also, interrogate Marcel about Melissa. Ask him for a list of all clients from the past year. Tell him it's to look for possible suspects or something like that." "Understood. How's it going with Jude?" "She took the news about Melissa hard," I said, feeling the weight of the situation. Melissa was clearly devastated. Although they hadn't spoken in a long time, they had been best friends for many years, so this must have been incredibly painful for her. "Has she been involved with him yet?" Martinez asked with a chuckle. I didn't respond to his question, not wanting to share the sensitive details I had uncovered. "I know," he admitted. "I didn't bring up the photographs I had found." "You said you never touched Melissa," Martinez remarked. Jude shouted to her yoga instructor. "Where the hell did you find this?" Her voice shook, pointing at a photo of Marcel with Melissa. The instructor's accent seemed to vanish. "Remember the break-in at your studio?" I asked with a grin. "You're lying," Marcel spat angrily. Jude turned to him, her face streaked with tears. "Have you been lying all this time? I trusted you." She turned to me, her face still wet with tears. "I'm so sorry. I was a fool." I showed her a few more photos. These images depicted numerous moments between Marcel and Melissa. It was clear they had been involved for a long time. He had a habit of documenting his relationships. I then showed her another image of Marcel with an unknown woman. "Do you know who this is?" I asked. "It's Angie," Jude replied, her voice shaking. "You were involved with her too?" I pressed, showing more pictures of Marcel with other women from the studio. Jude was visibly shocked. Oh my God, did you sleep with all the women in the group? Am I the only one you haven't been with yet? I interrupted her. Isn't that why you came here? Jude couldn't answer, and she looked like she was about to collapse. I flipped to the next photo. It was of Melissa again, but this time she was lying at the crime scene. It was clear she was no longer alive. Jude screamed in horror. Martinez soon returned with more information. He had spoken to all the victims, and it turned out that 3 of them were regular clients of the Happy Life studio, while the others had attended a few free beginner classes. That gave us 6 victims we could directly link to Marcel, which was enough to secure the necessary warrants. We began making plans. We began strategizing how to conduct the search. During this time, one of our technicians started intercepting Marcel's calls and text messages. Over the next few days, I kept an eye on Jude, using the GPS tracker. I always knew where she was. I had to stay close to her house to ensure her safety, which meant I was neglecting my responsibilities on the case. Fortunately, Martinez tried to cover for me. He called whenever he had questions or needed direction, but mostly he managed things on his own. I was determined to keep Jude away from the studio and away from Marcel, knowing that being near him could put her in danger. I had to come up with excuses and make sure I was home whenever she was home. However, this morning, she made it clear that she was going to the studio, whether I wanted her to or not. I couldn't think of a plausible reason to dissuade her, so I decided to let her go and follow her instead. I pretended to leave for work, parked at the end of the street, and watched the house through binoculars. Less than a minute later, she left the house. I saw her load a duffel bag and a large bottle of water into the trunk, then get into the car and drive off. I let her drive a little further, then followed her, keeping an eye on the GPS signal. She headed straight to the mall and parked near the yoga studio. While I waited for her to come out, my work phone rang. It was Martinez. I answered, anticipating that he had an update for me. I stood there, my eyes fixed on the entrance to the studio, waiting for any sign of movement. My phone buzzed, and I answered it without hesitation. "Do you have anything new on the matter?" I asked, trying to remain focused. "We're still waiting on DNA results from the kit and the crime scene," Martinez replied, his tone showing a hint of annoyance. "But we have a problem. Jimmy, our computer guy, intercepted a call from Marcel to your wife. They're planning to meet at a hotel. You need to do something about it." My heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" I asked, my blood pressure rising. "There's no doubt," Martinez confirmed. "Jude is supposed to meet him at the studio, and then they'll head to the hotel together. You don't have much time." I checked my weapon instinctively. It was already a nervous habit to make sure it was loaded. "Thank you," I muttered, more to myself than to him. "Looks like I might need your cousin today." Martinez's response was immediate. "I was afraid you'd say that. But you need to control yourself, Bill. The captain has blocked me more than once because of you. Jimmy's a good guy, but he's going to have to document Marcel's call to Jude. When this comes out, everyone will know that the chief investigator's wife was involved with the main suspect in the murder case. If you do something rash, your career is over. You need to get Jude out of this, and stay away from it. Don't mess this up." I could hear the worry in his voice, and it made my stomach churn. Martinez was right. If I took the law into my own hands, everyone would know. There seemed to be no way out. "Are we sure it's him?" I asked, looking for reassurance. "You know as much as I do," Martinez responded. "He fits the description of the crimes. We're pretty sure he killed Melissa. Let's just say, I wouldn't want that guy near my wife." I swallowed hard, focusing on what needed to be done. "Eddie," I said, using his real name for the first time in a while. "No matter what happens, stay clean. You don't know anything, got it? Damn it, what are you doing?" Martinez asked, panic creeping into his voice. "I have to go," I said, already moving toward my car. "This is something I have to do." "You were a good teammate, Bill. Don't do anything stupid," he warned, but I didn't have time for more. I hung up the phone and turned off my personal one, not wanting to be disturbed or tracked. Moments later, I saw the studio door open. Jude and Marcel stepped out together, walking toward her car. When Jude saw the photo I had taken, it took a few seconds for her mind to process what she was seeing. Her eyes widened, and she gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Marcel saw her reaction and tried to run, but I raised my gun, aiming it at him. "Give me a reason," I said, my voice low. "Give me one reason to pull the trigger." Behind me, I heard a woman scream. I turned to see the waitress, her eyes wide with fear as she stared at the weapon. I quickly flashed my badge. "I'm a cop," I shouted. She backed away slowly, then turned and ran into the kitchen. My heart raced. Tom was running out. She'd probably already called the police, and in about 8 minutes, this place would be full of them. "Bill, what are you doing?" My wife screamed. "He killed her," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "He slept with Melissa, and then he killed her." Marcel raised his hands, exhaling as he tried to back away from me. "No, man, I didn't kill her, I swear. She was alive when I left. Your DNA is still on her. You'll get a lethal injection for this. We just met for a night, man. Honestly, we did this every week. Why would I kill her? She was a great match." "You're mistaken." "Marcel," I said, my voice cold. "You're under arrest." I twisted his arm behind his back and forcefully snapped the handcuffs onto his wrist. "Anything you say can be used against you." "Okay, never mind." "Bill, what are you doing?" Jude's voice was filled with confusion and fear. She looked terrified and distressed. "Stay here and don't interfere," I told her, my tone firm. "Marcel and I are going for a little walk." "No, Bill," she screamed, her voice breaking. "You can't do this. He's not worth it. There was nothing between us. I love you, Bill. Don't ruin your life for this man. Please, stay here." I ignored her, focusing on Marcel. "Get up," I demanded, tugging at his handcuffs. He staggered and moved forward with hesitation, uncertainty clear in his movements as I pushed him toward the exit. Behind us, the door opened again, and Jude came rushing out, holding her phone in her hand. "Bill, stop," she cried, her voice desperate. "It's your partner, Martinez," my wife said, handing me the phone. "He says it's urgent." I froze, eyes fixed on her, anger burning inside me. My heart was pounding. With one hand still holding Marcel by the handcuffs, I reached out and took the phone. "Speak quickly," I said firmly. "Why haven't you been answering?" "I've been calling nonstop." Martinez's voice came through, filled with urgency. "I'm a little busy right now," I replied, cutting him off. "It's not him," Martinez shouted. "What are you talking about?" I asked, stunned. "The DNA, it's his, yes. But listen, he didn't do it. There's a lot of other DNA on her and in her life. We found a license plate too. The person who killed her, it wasn't Baffles." "You're not making any sense," I snapped. "You just don't want me to go after him." "No, I swear," he insisted. "Besides, the DNA in the kit doesn't match the samples from the other 2 cases. It's not him." "Bill," Jude suddenly cried out. I looked up. Time seemed to slow. Her eyes were locked on something behind me. I turned just as the first gunshot rang out. Instinct took over. I reached for my weapon, but another shot followed. I caught a glimpse of the shooter, Dave. There was chaos. Gunfire. In the struggle, both Dave and Slippery went down. "Bill," Jude was shouting. "You're hurt." She rushed to me as I fell back. I could feel myself losing strength. I looked up at the wide Texas sky until it disappeared, replaced by the face of the only woman I had ever truly loved. She was crying. "No, Bill," she sobbed. "Don't leave me." I smiled faintly at her, but everything was fading. Darkness closed in. I wanted to sleep, but a sharp, relentless sound kept pulling me back, some kind of loud, piercing signal echoing through my mind. It felt like a phone ringing, constantly, over and over. I opened my eyes. Jude was beside me. "Turn off that signal," I whispered through dry, cracked lips. My voice came out more like a rustle than speech. She gasped with relief and held me close. I could feel her hands on mine. When I looked down, I saw her pressing soft kisses to my hand, her tears flowing freely. "Oh, Bill, you're awake," she whispered. I nodded faintly. Suddenly, people began gathering around the bed, medical staff, I assumed. They were checking monitors, adjusting tubes. I tried to push them away, but I was too weak to lift even a finger. I closed my eyes, just for a moment. When I opened them again, the room was dark. Everyone was gone. Except Jude. She was still there, sitting quietly beside me, her head resting against my hand. I moved slightly, and she stirred. Her eyes opened and immediately met mine, full of worry. I tried to speak, but then I realized there were tubes in my throat. Tubes protruded from my nose and mouth. I lifted my left hand and tried to pull them free. "No, Bill, please," Jude pleaded. "You have to leave them in place." I stared at her, the memory of her betrayal searing through me, Jude, and that Slippery man. She was the last person I ever wanted to see. Ignoring her cries, I yanked hard and ripped the tubes out. JW reached for me, but it was too late. My voice came out a weak rasp. When Jude didn't understand, I drew a shuddering breath and tried again. Get out of here, you unfaithful woman. The monitor sounded an urgent alarm. Bill, I love you. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I shook my head. Nurses and orderlies burst into the room, held me down, and reinserted the tubes. Darkness claimed me again. When I came to this time, I saw Jude and our children asleep together on the sofa. Exhausted, I drifted off and woke again to hushed voices. I couldn't live if he dies thinking I cheated, a woman said. A man's voice answered. Did you change your story? No, she replied. I went to the hotel with Marcel intending to go through with it, but at the last moment I couldn't. He pressured me, and I nearly gave in, but I'm grateful I didn't. Then why did Bill believe you were unfaithful? Martinez demanded. He saw photos or videos Marcel took in his office. I don't know how he got them, maybe hidden cameras, but they were taken out of context. Martinez laughed softly. Still, it was convincing. Marcel kissed you. I closed my eyes, pained. Yes, but I pushed him away every time. All anyone sees is a kiss. I swear on my children's lives, nothing more happened. Do you understand? He will never believe you, Martinez said gravely. Even I wasn't sure I believed her. Jude stepped forward. Sometimes a lie is easier to accept than the truth. Are you telling me to lie to Bill? She asked. Someday, yes, he replied. I can't, she said, voice firm. I'd rather tell him everything, even if he never forgives me. I just pray he survives. I will do whatever he asks if only he'll let me stay by his side. 3 agonizing weeks in the hospital were followed by 3 months of rehabilitation before I was finally allowed home. Jude never left me, despite my repeated demands. Every day I am your wife, she said, eyes unwavering. My place is beside you. I'm not going anywhere. I wasn't pleased, but I needed her. One afternoon, doubled over in pain, I warned, the day I can stand on my own, I'll file for divorce. Tears welled in her eyes, but she only nodded. I understand, she whispered. Jude replied softly, I will do whatever it takes to help you get back on your feet. I was determined to end our marriage. She had made her choice. I refused to be treated as anything less than my own priority. Yet I understood that it might be a long time before I could walk again. I had been shot twice and was partially paralyzed. The doctor said my chances of walking normally were slim. But after all, what do doctors really know? In the aftermath of the shooting, everything became clearer. First, had I not been so seriously injured, I likely would have been dismissed from the force. I had let my personal feelings completely compromise the investigation. If Dave had not intervened, I would have made even more mistakes, but fate decreed otherwise, and in the end I was able to retire with honor. Second, it turned out that Marcel Baffles had not murdered anyone. He did not need to, he already had more than enough casual relationships. He had also been truthful about his involvement with Melissa. For several months, they met once a week for an evening together. Dave uncovered these meetings and confronted her. Melissa confessed that she was in love with Marcel and had considered leaving Dave to be with him, but Marcel ultimately rejected her and insisted that she stay away. Despite his rejection, their weekly encounters continued, apparently at Melissa's insistence. Eventually, Dave followed her to the hotel, waited until Marcel departed, and then confronted them both. At the door, she must have assumed that Marcel had returned. In a fit of rage, Dave burst into the room and shot her. That was not enough for him. He also intended to kill Marcel. It appears that he tracked Jude and Marcel from the yoga studio to the hotel. Had I been more vigilant, I might have noticed his presence. Dave waited outside, observing. When I produced Marcel in handcuffs, it was a ruse. I had devised my own strategy for handling him, but Dave intervened before I could act. Eventually, Martinez employed a genealogy website to trace the true serial offender by means of DNA analysis. It emerged that the real perpetrator was a disturbed individual who will now spend the rest of his life in prison. Approximately 2 weeks after my return home, Martinez visited to check on my progress. The rehabilitation process was arduous. Despite Jude's devoted care, I resisted participating in physical therapy, and consequently my condition stagnated. I had lost all motivation to recover or walk again. The memory of Jude's betrayal and the thought of that other man filled me with revulsion. I was overcome with despair. I wondered how I could continue living. Nobody seemed to care whether I survived. It might have been easier for everyone if Dave had taken my life alongside that man's. I also recalled the conversation between Jude and Martinez in the hospital. Martinez was correct. I did not believe her. Strangely, Jude had never mentioned Marcel again, and I had deliberately avoided the subject. It was like an elephant in the room, yet none of us would speak of it, for fear of provoking something worse. All I could do was wait for the mouse that would one day startle the elephant in my room. She insists that she did not cheat on you, Martinez said as Jude went into the kitchen to prepare tea. I am aware, I replied. I overheard your conversation when you assumed I was unconscious. Did you hear the entire exchange? He asked. I believe so. And you still do not believe her? No, I do not believe her. And you will never forgive her, correct? I will not forgive her. Then you need to see this. Martinez retrieved his phone and played a video. I recognized it immediately. It was one of the clips from that other man's collection. The recording showed Jude speaking with Marcel in his office about a planned trip to Costa Rica. Suddenly, he grabbed her and kissed her, just as depicted in the photographs. Jude slapped him and demanded that he never do that again. Everything unfolded exactly as she had described. Martinez then played a second, longer clip. Jude's account was truthful. The events occurred precisely as she had recounted. I felt a wave of relief that the man was already deceased. Otherwise, I might have sought vengeance myself. I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face until the muscles in my abdomen cramped with tension. The next day, I asked Jude to take me to a rehabilitation center. It was an arduous battle as I fought to rebuild the neural connections between nerve and muscle, but for the first time I had a purpose. I resolved to fight until the end. 2 years later, Jude held my hands as I struggled to stand. She positioned herself in front of me with a gentle smile, then stepped back. I braced myself and, with great effort, lifted my right leg and took the first cautious step. I shifted my weight, then lifted my left leg, moved it forward, and placed it firmly on the floor. That is it, my love, Jude encouraged. You can do it. She let go of my hands and stepped back again. I nodded, determined, and took my first step since the injury. Slowly, step by step, I made my way forward. I paused, looked at my wife, and smiled. Until that moment, I had doubted if I would ever be able to walk again. But now I knew I could. It was just a matter of time, effort, and patience. In that moment, I forgot about the pain that Slippery had caused in my life. I forgot about Jude's near betrayal. I forgot about the day I had been shot, the day I planned to take Marcel out of town, put 2 bullets in his head, and die. As I walked, Jude and I locked eyes. We both cried. She wiped away her tears. You took your first step without help, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you. I think now you want a divorce. I shook my head slowly. No, I replied, tears streaming down my cheeks. Isn't that why you worked so hard to walk again? She asked, a little confused. No, I answered again. I worked so hard because I wanted to walk down the aisle with you again, if you'll agree to marry me again. I extended my hands to her, and she stepped toward me, taking my hands. With great effort, I knelt down, barely maintaining my balance, and held her hands. Jude, I believe in you, I said. I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much I love you. Will you marry me again? Yes, she exclaimed, a wide smile breaking through her tears. She rushed toward me, knocking me off my feet, and showered me with kisses. I held her close, kissing her tightly, tenderly, passionately. She seemed to melt in my arms. We were starting a new life. Jude put all her yoga skills into practice, and I became her devoted student. If she could teach a broken man like me, she could work wonders with anyone. We were so inspired by the transformation that we decided to invest part of the settlement money I received after my injury to open our own yoga studio. It was a dream come true for both of us. But first, we had to go to Costa Rica so Jude could get her instructor certification. Jude was going to become a certified yoga instructor. Subscribe to our channel to follow our journey and to make sure your love story doesn't end in betrayal. Stay tuned for the next story. It's even more intense than this one. If you're under 18, don't even think about clicking ahead. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.